It's 4:30, so I'm going to go ahead and call us to order for the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Costa Mesa Sanitary District for March 27. If you'd all please stand and join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Vice President Schaefer.
Okay. You can either stand or sit, whichever you prefer on this one.
So do we need to sit?
No, you could do what you want. I have to sit or you won't hear me. So I don't have a choice. Please bow your heads as we give thanks for a community we serve. We are able to communicate with the people in our area. And it means so much to us because with the people in our area, the people listen to what we're saying and we're able to share with them a lot of experiences and problems that we might have. It is so important to be able to actually talk to everyone and communicate back and forth. May we keep this going. It's so important. May we keep not only that, but to communicate open to everybody in our area so that they have the full understanding of what is going on and what's happening. And I'm going to leave you with one thought, and that is, I leave you with this thought saying, we make a living on what we get, and we make a life on what we give. That's it. Thank you.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Director Brett Eccles,
Here.
Vice Secretary Robert Uten,
Here.
Secretary Arthur Perry,
Here.
Vice President Arlene Schaefer,
Here.
and Mike Schaefer.
Here. Thank you. Late communications.
No, Mr. President.
Any ceremonial matters this evening?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. Public comments. It's time for persons in the audience to comment on subject matters not on our agenda. Each speaker would have 4 minutes to speak. Please give us your name and your residence.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sue Lester. I live in Costa Mesa. I am currently a member of the Citizen Advisory Committee, but I am not here representing them in any way, shape, or form. I'm just here as a resident. Part of what I'm going to talk about here belongs under an agendized item, so I'm not going to talk about it other than to say at the Board of Directors meeting on March 22nd in 2021, I spoke to you guys during public comment about term limits for all of you and for the CAC. As it relates to term limits for the board, during that meeting, Director Eccles expressed interest in visiting term limits for board members and at least having a conversation. And Director Uten, who I believe was president at the time, agreed and suggested that should be something that you guys discuss. So I'm here 2 years later asking if you guys would have the conversation, because I think it's important in government to act as you would act if people you didn't like were in office, just as much as if people you did like were in office. I am not in favor of no term limits for any elected official, whether I like them or not. And I don't think it's a good idea to set a precedent where people can just be in office forever. Look at our federal government. You guys have all done an outstanding job, and I'm not in no way, shape, or form implying that you aren't or you don't. But think in terms of if somebody got elected that just did a despicable job and people didn't pay attention and they just kept getting reelected, I don't think you would want that. So please take that under advisement and just at least think about having a conversation. Thank you.
You. Seeing no one else coming forward, let's move to the consent calendar, please. Any items to pull from the calendar? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion then.
I'll move for
Move.
approval.
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
All right, that motion carries unanimous. Public hearing, we have no public hearings this evening, so Scott, we'll move right to you. Item number 1 under the general manager's report.
Here, I'm gonna turn this one over to Nolani Midway on item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We have 5 seats that are currently vacant on our CAC committee, our Citizens Advisory Committee, as of April 1st. And we need to refill those seats. We received 3 applications, and those applicants have provided their applications and they are included in your staff report. And it is appropriate to appoint new members to the committee, and they will serve for a 2-year term to expire April of 2025.
So we have 2 incumbents essentially and 1 new voice.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead, Brett.
I have a question. So we have 2 openings available, correct?
5.
5 available, 3 applicants, 2 of which are incumbents. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 questions / comments. Can we either reorder this after the next agenda item where we're going to be reviewing, maybe tweaking the ordinance or about the term limits and things like that on the CAC, or tabling this discussion until maybe another meeting in the future, once we get that in place, because we might have other applicants who are currently serving, might be termed out. So we're kind of going a little bit out of order for my liking.
Maybe we switch in the order. Maybe we do item number 2 first, and then based on what the board decides, we come back to this item.
But the only problem is if we come back to this item tonight, we don't have anyone else's application that might choose to, depending on what we do with the next item.
We'll keep it open for more applications to be submitted because we're still down one application, two applications.
2. Okay, good point. Well, I would suggest at least we switch these around, is my suggestion.
Question. How long have we been looking for somebody?
We started posting back in February. And we've had it all over our social media. We've been boosting those posts. And still yet we only received 3.
Okay, did we put anybody in our newsletter?
We did not include it in our newsletter.
Okay. Okay,
Did we have a deadline?
We did.
And what was that date?
That was March 19th.
Question for Director Eccles. So do you think by changing or doing something different under item 2, it'll attract other people to apply?
I think it's a possibility. I just think we're going in the wrong order. We're going to either appoint or not appoint these people, but if we reopen the process based upon if we do have a new policy, you never know.
Does that new policy, if we pass it tonight, Alan, take effect immediately, or does it have to go through a second reading or anything?
The policy that's in the board packet right now?
Well, item 2 essentially changes the policy if we approve it or make, right?
Yes.
So does that become effective tomorrow, tonight? Okay. Good.
Okay, so I suggest we put the 3 in and extend our deadline. That's kind of what Brett's talking about, because I think these 3 are all viable candidates after reading them. So that would be my suggestion. Keep the take back.
Mike,
Just change our deadline date.
As it is right now, the application process is still open until the other 2 seats are filled. So whatever the board's pleasure is, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I guess I understand what we're talking about. And essentially, it doesn't matter either way. I think changing the policy, if we vote to change the policy, these three candidates, I think, are still going to have their names there anyway. So that's my only thinking is, and we have them that are we're in need of them by April 1st. So that's why I asked the question about the timing. It's a pleasure to the board. I don't think it matters either way. I understand what you're saying, and there probably are some people that might apply, but I don't think there's an overwhelming group of people out there that can say, "Oh, term limits are gone, so now I'm going to run." I just don't. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to accept all three candidates as presented.
Talking about keeping item number 1 on the
Number
discussion.
1 on the agenda. That's what but that's just me speaking, so I don't know.
Did you make a motion?
I made a motion.
Oh, okay. I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion. All right, then I'll ask all those in favor.
Aye.
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 All right, that motion carries to appoint Ms. Lester, Ms. Brenneman, and
It's not Lester,
aren't you?
it's,
No, she's not on it.
it's
What the heck am I?
it's
What?
Francisca Normington, Jeff Arbor.
You don't look like Jeff Arbor at all, even with my crummy glasses. I beg your
You
pardon,
mixed
Sue.
up with Cindy's here.
Okay, so we have elected Mrs. Brenneman, Mr. Arbor, and Ms.
Northington.
Normington. Yeah. Okay, and that's effective now. It's Monday, remember? Okay, so item 2, consider amending administrative policy number 60.00.
Thank you, Mr. President. So attached to your staff report is those proposed changes, which is on page 2 of the policy. It's the reason why we're doing these, recommending these changes is to improve or enhance recruitment and retention of our CAC members. It basically gets rid of the term limits and allows CAC members to serve on the committee at the pleasure of the board, or if there is fewer applications than vacancies, then if the CAC member wants to continue serving on the committee at the pleasure of the board, that committee member can do that. So those are the changes we're recommending, and happy to answer questions you may have.
Go.
Yeah, Scott, so right now, what are the current term limits or how,
It can serve up to 6 years,
and then
2 years, up to 6 years.
we have a sit out period and they could reapply that. Okay. I'm always in favor of term limits in general for electeds and all that. So, but I want the CAC to have, high participation. So I'm generally okay with it, but my question is, it serves at the pleasure of the board. So let's just say there's a person that serves, but I don't know, never shows up or says disparaging things. We would have to remove that person, or they're going to serve for the remainder of the year. How does that work?
And that's happened in the past. There's been a CAC member that did not ever attend a meeting and the board removed that member. So we would bring it back to the board and the board would make that decision to remove that person.
Okay, so just because we could be eliminating term limits, we don't have to wait until the end of the year to, okay. Okay, all right.
Can I add, I wanted to add something. Actually, when we do our policies, it might change too on that, where, it will change the capability of somebody being on or off or whatever.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bob.
Did any of the members that were termed out come to you and request? Have you had any of the members ask, for this kind of a policy change?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Question. For every meeting that you have you ever not had enough members to run the meeting?
Mike.
Is it
No, we've always had a quorum.
at 6 or more? Okay. And what would it be? So we're going to be short 2, so that puts us down to 9. Is there anybody currently serving would it be affected by the change if we don't accept this?
Yes, I believe there might be one member who is willing to continue serving based on the board's decision. If there is term limits, you can still consider that person cannot serve anymore. But if you approve the recommendation, the status suggesting that person can still serve.
I have one more question, like Brett said. After 6 years, they have to set out? Because he said they'll set out, then they can reapply again? Or
Yes, they can, after 2 years, right?
they have to wait 2 years and then they can reapply again? I would go for that, but I don't know about continuing on for,
Well,
10 years.
yeah, the only reason, it's nice to have 11 citizens, because we believe that the more participation, the better. But right now, if the board doesn't approve the recommended changes, then yes, we would just have 9 and continue to start. We'll do our best to try to recruit the other 2. But
'Cause I think, like someone suggested, put in a newsletter would be really good because everybody reads that newsletter because it's really accurate and helpful.
yeah, that's true. But the newsletter only comes out every 4 months, so the timing is not right. We probably should have
But yeah,
a little bit
probably should.
sooner. Yes, it's just timing's not right at this point.
Those are my questions.
Okay, so Mike, let me ask something, I'll come back. So the attachment to our board packet, Administrative Policy 60.00, that's the governing document for the CAC, essentially, right?
It's the policy. Yes, it is the policy for establishing the CAC and identifies their goals and their assignments, what their
Yeah.
role is. Yes.
Okay, so at the risk of asking a dumb question, which I'm not above,
It is Monday.
it is Monday. I've read these guidelines, the operating guidelines, and where does it talk about term limits in here?
It is on page 2. It's where the red mark is on page 2, section 4A4. There's a term appointments of each member of the CAC shall be for 2 years, staggered. Such term would begin on April 1st.
Okay, this wasn't part of the attachment.
It should be a
That was part of it.
Here.
It was one of the attachments.
Okay, it's not I'm looking at the board docs document. And
Oh.
so this is under section 3, general information and procedures. If you look at the board docs attachment, there's nothing referred to on term is.
I'm in board docs right now, and I just opened up the attachment.
It's in there, Mike. You may not have printed it.
It's, no, I didn't print, it's not in mine. It's not in here.
Here, I'm gonna have staff to see what you're looking at.
Okay, so show me where it says,
Section 8, item 4. I should give this book
Fine, that's right there, the red part.
audience's book.
Oh,
it doesn't say anything about 6 years.
and on board docs of mine, it doesn't either, but it did at my office today. But I was using a different computer.
At risk of being out of order here.
Just a minute. I'm gonna get this clarified before we have any discussion. It's not in here.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not that dumb. I don't think. Okay, so that's what you're talking about. It's not there. Okay,
And I don't have it either, just so you know.
and I didn't have that policy, so I kept reading that and reading that, and I'm thinking,
That's
I
mine.
don't see term.
Well, what's weird is I read it at my office.
It did show up.
Yeah.
I had to go to your office. Okay.
I wasn't smart like you and I didn't print it out.
That's fine. Okay, we have term limits, that's fine. If it's in there and it's not on mine, that's okay. I'm concerned about some other things with CAC, and the term limits thing is up there. I mean, that's a concern. I totally agree with that. But I think we have some other issues, and I've attended the last several CAC meetings, and there were a lot of name tags for people that I didn't see either time. It's not showing up on mine.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's okay. It's okay. We're fine. I'll get a printed copy of that. If Nolani can send me a printed copy of that, I'd appreciate it, or somebody. What I would like to do is take a look at the attendance from this. I'm concerned about some of the members who are not attending, okay?
And board meetings. Or board meetings saying,
CAC meetings, okay? I'm concerned about the fact that we had told the CAC, we need you to come to at least one board meeting. These two generous ladies are the only two I've ever seen at a board meeting.
Michael Tao's been here a few times.
I'm sorry, Michael has been, I beg your pardon. But what I would like to see is a recap of the last year's CAC meetings and who's been attending and who's not been attending. I'd like to table this discussion for now until I see that information so that we can have a better idea of who's attending and who's really interested in this. I mean, everyone's got a different motive for being on the CAC, okay? But I would like to see who really is interested and who's really showing up and talking about term limits if we need to, once I've had a chance to look at that information.
You want CAC members attendance of the CAC as well as board meetings?
Yeah. Bob?
Some of them have been on virtually.
There was nobody virtual. The only time I've seen virtual was Chairman Katz 2 months ago. I don't have a problem. If they're attending virtually, that's as good as being here in this room as far as I'm concerned, because we've given them that opportunity to do that. Again, there were several names with empty seats there, and there's some folks that, for whatever motivation they applied and got on here, now they really want to be on there. I don't think term limits is going to affect whether they show up or not. Okay. But I don't want to make a decision about term limits until I have a better idea of who's really interested in doing this, because we value what's coming from here. And I think we need full participation from all the members.
Just to be clear, you want to go back 1 year? How far back do you want to go?
Just a year. That's fine. So in that regard, I don't know how, as the board, I'd like to table this until either a study session or the next board
I
meeting.
would say study session.
I'm going to call for public comments in just a second. Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
And then if going on that suggestion, I go back then to, if we table this, say to the next in April's board meeting, what does that do? Can we extend then the timeline for applicants to apply then? Okay, like existing people. So if they're termed out right now, they can still apply in a month from now if we make this decision.
Yeah, and I think when we have openings, there really is no deadline for people to apply. I think they can apply anytime if there's continuing openings. There's no deadline. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think Nolani said that earlier.
Yeah, she said it would be extended.
I would like a couple applications that I have friends that might be interested. When I leave here tonight, maybe.
Okay.
I agree with Mike with your, is that a motion to?
I mean, we've honestly, we've let some things slide with CAC and not disciplinary things, right? But there's a lot of things that, and we need to take as a board more interest in this and more direction with this, but I'd like to see who's really interested in doing this. Okay.
I think we're doing the cart before the horse. Because tomorrow we're having a policy meeting.
Well, we can back that off also.
What?
We can back that off. Just don't talk about that until we know what the decision of the board is going to be. You know,
I'd like to make a motion that this item be.
We do have public comment.
Yeah, let Bob, before you do that. Now, I'm going to open this up for public comments at this point. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak?
Lester, current CAC member. I will be officially termed out as of April 1st. I would have reapplied if there weren't term limits. I'm basically the sole survivor of the CAC from when it was first created. To his credit,
I think Elodie came from the very beginning as well.
yeah, but she's not reapplying. Yeah. or wouldn't have. We talked about it, but to Scott's credit, he said, you know, don't let the fact that there's term limits get in the way of you applying if you want to reapply, because you guys were going to discuss it and you may vote to change things, which was kind of him to throw out there. But I didn't feel like that was appropriate. I didn't feel like I should fill out an application for something that as of now, I'm not even eligible to continue. Now, having said that, I'm actually on the policy ad hoc committee and the solid waste committee. And I've spent a lot of time reading all of the policy documents and highlighting all this stuff. And if the meeting takes place tomorrow, I can still participate because technically I'm still a member. If you bump it out, then I'm not a member of the CAC anymore. I guess I could participate as a member of the public if that's allowed, but I'm just throwing that in as a footnote. As far as term limits go, it doesn't give somebody from the CAC the ability to stay on the CAC forever without being checked, because there's still only 2-year time limits. All removing the time limits are going to do, or the term limits are going to do, is going to give people the ability to reapply. There's nothing that says you have to vote them in.
Right.
And the reason I'm making such a big deal about this, and the funniest part about it is all of you, aside from this, you have led groups of volunteers with a multitude of organizations in the community, and you've been volunteers, and you know how hard it is to get good volunteers. I'm just asking you to remove the 3-year time frame of 2 years for people that you may want to keep that are contributing in a positive manner. You never want to take the ability of somebody to want to volunteer for you away from them, because they'll just bail and they'll go do something else. Like right now, I left the Wildlife Center to come here because I volunteered there because I wanted to talk to you guys about this. I think it's really important. I also agree with what you said about people sign up for things so they can write it on a resume and they never participate. I would actually like to continue on the CAC. I would have applied if I felt that it was appropriate or I qualified to reapply. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'm here. I'm usually here. Over the last 5 years, I know I don't always say things that people might appreciate or agree with, but I care enough to say it because I think it's a beneficial thing to do. Doesn't mean anyone needs to agree with me, but I think it's important that you have people like that. And we don't have a lot of people like that on the CIC. And I have done everything that staff has ever asked me to volunteer for. I mean, we use my mom's house to make all the videos. I'm a renter and my family owns a home here, so I share a unique view. If you leave it the way that it is and, take 2 years off and then come back, I wouldn't do that. I would just leave. And I'm just talking about people that are invested in volunteering, not just specifically me. But I would urge you to take the opportunity to extend the ability for people to volunteer forever if that's what they want to do. All you're doing is you're giving them the opportunity to turn in an application. And then if you guys select them, then they continue. If you don't want them anymore, you don't have to vote them in. Just like if you extend the opportunity and I apply, you guys may not want me. That's a very real possibility, and that's okay. But the verbiage, the way that it is, I think you need to change it. I think it just needs to say that the term of the appointment for each CAC shall be 2 years staggered, what it says, and just eliminate the part that it has in the I'll just read it because I actually have the right one. it says the term of the appointment of each member of the CAC shall be for 2 years staggered, such term to begin April 1st. If an opening is filled during the term of an existing appointment, the appointment anniversary date shall be the previous April 1st. And then at the end part is where it says membership shall be limited to 6 years of continuous service. Individuals may be reappointed after 2 years of the CAC. I'm saying just eliminate those 2 sentences. The membership shall be limited to 6 years of continuous service, and the part that says individuals may be reappointed after 2 years. That's it. Doesn't let anybody stay longer. It just gives people the chance to apply as often as they want. And then if they're worth it, keep them. And if not, then don't. Thank you.
Thank you. The Citizens Advisory Committee, as we all know, is a volunteer appointed office. Is there anything that prevents us from digressing from that actual, she's off April 1st? Can we say because of our tabling this or putting the decision off, is there anything that prevents us from saying the volunteer who would be going off this April 1st, we can extend that until a decision's been made? We can do that. We can keep Sue on the committee until we make a decision about term limits, right?
Yes, it's a policy. You can make that's your decision. You're the policymakers. You can make that policy.
Mr. President, the people that serve on that committee do not hold offices. That's a distinction. You
That's-
hold an office.
yeah.
They do not hold an office.
Yeah, that's kind of where the way I was thinking, Alan. I appreciate
They're
you saying that.
subject to your appointment and dismissal at your pleasure.
Does anybody have a problem with extending the expiring members? How many members are expiring? 5 people are off April 1st.
2 for sure would be termed out.
Okay, does anybody have a problem with extending their membership until we make a decision on this term limit thing? Okay, so you're on until we tell you you're not, or yes. In the meantime, based on the fact that we are looking at extending or getting rid of this term limits, is there anything that prevents Ms. Lester from applying to be back on CA? Okay, so my recommendation would be that you go ahead and put an application in if you decide you want to stay, so that when this is changed, or if it's changed or not changed, we at least have the ability to appoint you if we want to. That make sense?
Yes, but if you don't change it, then I'm filling out an application for that.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
I would just tweak it to say any existing member who may be termed or who is termed out April 1st will extend it until we make this decision. And then at that point, she or anyone else could reapply a week later. I mean, what's the difference?
That's kind of, I agree.
I'll second that motion.
CAC member and apparently future CAC member. Thank you very much.
Too late, you've already been reappointed.
I have no problem at the moment, but I might in 2 years though. So I won't repeat what Sue said. I agree with everything that she said, and I agree with what Arlene said. We really are doing the cart before the horse, because the meeting tomorrow is the one that should be discussing this. Then it should have gone to you guys, and then it should have gone to putting people on the committee. And because I'm confused, what will I be under? Will I be under no term limits or term limit? So right now I know I'm here until 2025. And then how will that affect the 3 people who were voted in tonight? Or is that on hold now?
If we get rid of term limits next month, when we discuss this again, then you would be under the new policy, right? You would not be subject to term limits.
So don't let the term limit thing scare you guys, because realistically, look at who's going to want to, unless if somebody's looking for a career, they're not going to stay on this committee for 6 years and beyond because they want a career in whatever it is, wherever they want to go and hold office. This truly is something that the community is involved with, and it's different. So us not having term limits, the same as you guys don't have term limits, we know that we can serve with you. We're going to learn and grow with you and not be termed out, and have to go on and maybe come back when there's a whole nother board. So anyway, that's it.
Well said. I think that's basic.
The CAC meet during the week.
The second Wednesday of every other month, so they won't meet till May.
Hey.
I was glad it's not on Tuesday.
Okay, so again, to the board, we table this till the April meeting with more information from staff on what we've requested. Makes sense to talk about this at the study session at all, or do you want to wait till the board meeting?
We're fine.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment that I went to the last meeting for the Citizens Advisory Committee, and it was good. And I talked to some of the people, and one of them was saying to me, I had no idea that sanitary does so much and how involved we are. And even as citizens, that you really listen to us of what we're saying. And I think it's important that people understand and know that, they are advising us, and, after that, it's up to us, and we win and we lose, with both sides. So, but I felt real good that it has a meaning, it's not just that we happen to come up with something and everybody really feels they're getting a lot out of it, because it was very structured meeting, and it was a good meeting.
One of the things I did notice also is president shall designate one member of the board of directors to serve 1 year as a non-voting liaison. I don't think we've done that in a while. So I'd like to bring that in when we have the discussion in April on who I'm going to designate as a liaison.
A lot of this will come up in policy too, at the policy meeting.
Yeah, that which we need to have. Go ahead.
And I want to go back to, I think one of your first points was maybe there's some other things that we need to clean up in here and tweak. So I would ask, and I don't know the legal way to do this, but if you have 2 suggestions, I've got 2 whatever, there's a mechanism we could send that to staff before this comes back, and let's just do it all at once if we can.
And I think that discussion tomorrow
Okay.
will generate some of that discussion as well. So if we put the cart before the horse can push the cart instead of pull it. Okay.
We have to vote on the. Vote on it. We already had a motion in a second.
What, to table it?
Yeah. the table.
All those in favor of tabling this?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. So what happens to the
With
3?
Bob and Art.
What happens to the 3 that we,
They're already in.
okay,
We voted.
I just want to make sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. You can go back to the Wildlife Center. That sounds like a lot more fun than the sanitary district. Okay, let's go to item 3.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is an opportunity for the district to join a growing coalition that's opposing a statewide ballot on the 2024 initiative 1935. That if it passes, it's going to have a significant effect on how local government can raise revenues. This is going to turn back the clock many years. So staff is recommending to the board adopt the resolution, attached resolution. This is the resolution that CSDA is recommending its members to adopt as well. The League of California Cities to have a resolution for the cities to adopt. I don't know how big the coalition of the cities, but I know for the special district, it's almost 100 joining that coalition. So by adopting this resolution, we'll join that coalition.
I'll move for approval of resolution 2023-981.
I've got several questions and comments. I mean, it could be seconded, but.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion is second. Go ahead, Brett.
So I think you just hit it on, Scott. One of my questions was, okay, the coalition, I didn't see a great number of cities. I saw special districts. I didn't see, might have missed one or two around here. They were all central and northern California. What about the special districts around here and what about the cities?
I don't know about the cities. If you want to come back and look at the league, contact League of California Cities, see how many cities are adopted their residents already. I'm just strictly going on special districts.
Yeah.
But I do know they have a grassroots efforts, meaning the League of California Cities have the same kind of grassroots efforts that CSD is doing to oppose this initiative. As far as special districts here in Orange County, again, I'd have to do some more research. I don't know which one. Again, it's possible they could pass a resolution as we get closer to the elections, because we're still about a good year and a half away till 2024. So, but I can do some more research on that.
Now that leads me to my second. I mean, we're way out in my research of this proposition. I mean, it's still, yes, it qualified for the ballot, but there's still opportunity where it could be tweaked, it could be removed, could be redone. There's all sorts of things, and we're maybe jumping a little too soon.
Don't know any kind of tweaking of this initiative is going to help us. The only way this is really going to help us if this initiative is defeated.
So, okay, so then I understand at the state level, there's a lot of stuff in the proposition I actually agree with. What makes it cumbersome for special districts versus, say, the state?
Well, I think the big issue is like there's 4 points there on the staff report. The last one is, everything's retroactive. So if let's say we adopt any kind of a fee adjustments prior to this initiative being passed, if it did pass 2024, we have to go back and redo the whole thing all over again. And so those revenues that we're generating already, I don't know if you have to give those back to the public. I don't know how that works, but okay, by all means, I'll give it to our attorney. I'm sure he's done some.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is the same initiative that's been proposed in past years. It's kind of like, this may be the third time proposed by the California Business Roundtable. It seeks to amend the California Constitution so it gets qualified to go on the ballot to change the Constitution. Once it changes the Constitution, of course, then it's pretty much gospel. And it limits the ability of state and local governments to enact or modify taxes, assessments, fees, and property-related charges. That's a big impact on us. The new law would add new rules about raising fees. It would restrict the ability to impose fines and penalties to a corporation or a property owner that violates water quality, public health, safety, nuisance, or other laws. It would apply retroactively and void all state and local fees that were adopted after January 1, 2022, if those were not adopted in alignment with what this initiative requires. And some of the more troubling things for a local government are that fees and charges may not exceed the actual cost of providing the service, which is, that part's okay. I mean, it's supposed to be the cost, but it says it's the minimum amount necessary to do the job. That last part is my word, but it raises issues about, the race to the bottom. Do you clean the sewer line 5 years, 10 years, maybe 1 year? What's the minimum required for government to perform a service? And does responding to a sewer spill, should that happen in half an hour or 20 minutes? What's the minimum? And it injects that element. And a lot of the objection to the law is it raises these new issues, whereas the law that we have already is very protective, and there's very much many protections about due process and fairness and all of that. And this just adds other layers onto that. Another one would be that the burden is on the agency. They changed it from preponderance of the evidence. Now you have to prove by clear and convincing evidence it was the actual cost of doing the minimum necessary. The fees must also be reasonable. Well, no problem with that, but reasonable to the payor. The person paying has to believe they're reasonable. It's like, there's an issue to be litigated. And also, it changes everything. Everything is either an exempt fee or a tax. It just makes a black and white change like that. And of course, if you're not on the exempt side, then you're subject to all kinds of penalties. And your fees, which are now your taxes, are going to be voided. Taxes, it raises the measure to 2/3 vote from a general. That doesn't really affect us. We don't impose taxes. But it does somewhat change and raise a new level for fines and water quality and, like a sewer spill and things like that, any kind of fine we would put in. And it requires that we provide adjudicatory due process. Well, I think we already do that. I mean, we have hearings and things like that, but it adds another level of, that can be challenged as to whether or not we met that standard. So because of all the ambiguities and the added burdens imposed, we recommend opposing the law. We think the law is adequate as it exists and provides all the protections necessary. We have Prop 218, we have Prop 26, we have Prop 13. We have the developer mitigation fee law, which we have to account for all our fees every 5 years. We have the developer processing fee, where you have to have a hearing to adopt a fee to get a permit. All those are in place with, it requires hearings, it requires notice. You have to prove your fees are justified. We don't see that it's necessary, and frankly, we think it will cause a lot of litigation because they've added a lot of new fees, terms in the law that we don't have right now. So I think that's the main reason of those that are against this initiative, and that's my opinion on this matter.
Thank you, Alan. And then just two more, I think. On the staff, in the next agenda item, which is on a bill that we're going to be looking to support or not support or watch, there was the actual bill in the staff report, and then there was also a fact sheet, albeit from the author's office. But why don't we have that in this? This was just straight off the CSDA website of all the problems with it, but I didn't see the actual language of the ballot proposition, or God forbid, the counter argument to the arguments Alan you just presented. I mean, every side's got an argument, whether it's valid or not, that's for someone else to determine. But I'm wondering, we didn't see any of that in this item.
That's my fault. I guess I could have put that on there. We could, if you want, we can, there's no rush to pass this resolution. We can table this item and bring it back, and I can attach the initiative language on there if you want.
My personal opinion, I know there's a motion second, but most ballot propositions, in my opinion, are garbage. I get it. But I always, as a private citizen voter, I do look at both sides of the equation to make my own voting determination. I'd like to do the same here. Like I said, my opinion, there's a few good things in this, but I just kind of want to look through it all. And then I would be curious with that what cities are jumping on this coalition as well, and just kind of see where we're at. Like I said, we've got quite a long time. I don't think there's a rush to judgment on this one tonight, but that's my opinion.
First and second.
Is there a substitute motion?
I would move that we table this to our April board meeting or study session, either one.
I'll second that.
Call for the question then on the substitute motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay,
Okay, so we have, I didn't vote. Okay, for nay. All right, so that motion fails 2-3. 3-2.
Can we go back to the original motion that?
The original motion was to
considered?
go ahead and participate in the proposition, right?
Mhm.
2023.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't say it, sorry.
Opposed.
All right, so that motion carries 4-1 with Director Eccles opposed. Okay. All right, let's move into item 4.
Thank you, Mr. President. So 2 weeks ago at your study session, staff shared with the board CARB's proposed advanced clean fleet regulations. that will require local, state and local fleets to acquire zero emission vehicles. And the goal is to pretty much have 100% of zero emission vehicles by 2027. However, there were some exemptions, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. If there is no market to manufacture fully electric vehicles like the combination sewer cleaning units, as I mentioned, there's no market to manufacture those type of units, then CARB saying then we can continue buying combustible engines type units. However, what's AB 1594 really gives you a little more, some more teeth in that exemptions. We'll actually make a law that says that if there's no market, then CARB, you cannot require cities or special districts or the state to buy ZEV vehicles if there's no market. So staff is recommending supporting AB 1554. I do want to mention that CSDA, the California Special District Association, has taken a watch to this bill. However, they are in discussion with CARB regarding the advanced fleet regulations, as well as with the Simon Garcia, who's the author of AB 1594. I also reached out to the Simon's office because I did have some concerns regarding the definition of what they define as public agency utility. As you can see in the staff report, I did recommend that they add the word and or collections after wastewater treatment, because my concern is that CARB will define wastewater treatment as Orange County Sanitation District, not us. So they are looking into that. Assuming Garcia's, I'll follow up with that his office later. But in the meantime, I do recommend that the board supports the President Schaefer to sign a letter of support for AB 1594.
Arlene?
I would think that we should do a wash on this until we find out, because the legislation committee on CSDA is doing a wash, which means they're trying to decide whether we should go or not go. So why should we jump in and do something that we don't, not that sure of?
Discussion, any other discussion, motion?
I'll move for approval of the letter of support for Assembly Bill 1594.
I'll second the motion.
What do you say? You're not talking in your mic, I
I'm
can't hear.
Had to read it, so I had to back up.
So you're moving, Art moved
To support,
to support the bill, and I seconded.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Before we take a vote, I like Director Eccles' recommendation about the previous bill. When we start, as we look at these, having the watch and the arguments, if we could do that on all these bills, if it's possible from now on, I think that's important. So, okay, motion is second. All those in favor? Opposed?
No.
You vote no? Okay, then we're not going to sign the support letter.
But can we do a substitute motion with Director Schaefer's watch position? I would second that if that's your motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to put it on a watch status. I'm a little confused. I thought CSDA approved this.
I've talked to them personally. They're on a watch right now. But
They are on a watch.
They're still in discussion. They haven't made a decision yet of where they stand on this bill.
Yeah, I personally think we should be out in front of this, but that's okay. Call for the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. The motion carries 3-2 with Schaefer spelled right and Perry voting no. Okay, thank you. All right, Mark, engineers report. Thank you, Scott.
Good evening, President Schaefer, Board of Directors. Last month, as you recall, I mentioned that the city Wilson Street project was on hold. Since that meeting, I had expressed concern to our general manager that it seemed as though the delay was continuing. I have good news in that the city has reported to me that work on Wilson was supposed to have restarted today. They have to regrind the entire length from the SR 55 all the way to Placentia and then repave the entire street. My understanding is it was going to be a 3 to 5 day venture to do all of that. I don't know if they started today. I haven't been out there, but I suspect if they can probably grind everything, but with the predicted rain Wednesday and Thursday, I'm going to expect that that'll be delayed. So they really won't finish up pavement until the following week. And then after that, it'll take probably a week to week and a half to get them to raise our manholes to grade. But at least we're seeing movement, and I'm happy to see that things are at least starting to get back on track for that project. Next project I want to report on is our Freeport 42, the headquarter landscaping project. There's been some delays to deal with tree issues, driveways, sidewalks. The city raised issues whether they want us to include the sidewalk or not again. So the city seems to be flip-flopping back and forth on some of these issues. I think part of the problem is our project got handed off to a different staff person, and that different staff person has a different view of how things should go. Based on everything that's going on with the city, I will be recommending to Scott, and I will be drafting an amendment or an addendum to our prospective bidders that we're going to need to extend the bid date because we need to resolve some of these issues with the city. Because what I don't want to do is award a project with things in it, then get a credit when we don't have to do them, or vice versa. We award a bid, then the city says, now you have to do this, that, or the other thing, and then we do a change order because we'll never get our dollar for dollar back on either of those items. So I'm looking to push that out, get these issues resolved. And if we have to delay it a month, I think that's a good delay. Red Hill Sewer, which is right back here off of Baker and Red Hill, that's out to bid. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting about a week or so ago. We've got several bidders that are interested. I'm hoping that we get some good prices on that since we had so many bidders participate. Something that's popped up on our radar about 2 or 3 weeks ago or so was American Sewer. Turns out there was a sinkhole adjacent to one of our manholes on American Avenue, north of American Place. We put a CCTV camera in and we found a grade 5 defect, and it appears as though we are creating a sinkhole. Our general manager directed me to get design underway so we can bid this on an urgent basis. And in our utility as-built searches, we found some discrepancies. We sent out a surveyor and we found that the as-built information with the city storm drain in the area, and because of the relative closeness of our pipe crossing over the city storm drain system, we sent a surveyor out and we found that the as-built situation that they reported to us is not what is actually out in the field. And so we put a CCTV camera in the city storm drain to figure out, do we have enough room? What's going on? Are there other issues to resolve? And then we basically realized that the city storm drain has also failed, and coincidentally, a second sinkhole in that same location is created because of their pipe. So in talking with the city inspector, the city engineer, we realized that we're going to have to do this work in coordination with the city. So they have to do their work, we have to do our work. And right now, based on a meeting that I had this morning, the city is looking to have us take the lead since our project is already designed, ready to go. And they have, I've got to get this in writing before we bid it, but they would like us to design and bid their work and then get that installed. So as soon as we get that in writing, that they will reimburse us, they will pay for RBH to design their pipeline replacement, and we will bid both sets of work together so they could be more effectively constructed. And the reason I'm saying we have to do them together is if we work on our trench, finishing everything up, then the city comes in, they're going to be tearing out some of our work or vice versa. So it doesn't serve the ratepayer, in my opinion, to have us do the work independently, since they would just be paying both agencies to do some of the work. So I'm recommending, and the city seems to be concurring, to do the work jointly, and that's the way we're planning to head. And I can report on that next month when we get back. Adams Sewer, our cleaning crew found that there was I'll call it a soft stoppage in our Adams Sewer, where the sewer crosses Adams Avenue and goes towards our pump station. We did a review of the CCTV done in 2016, and we did find an offset joint then, but we believe that the offset joint has shifted and has become unstable, and we believe that the joint is now allowing rags and stringy material to get caught up, and so we're going to have to go in and make a repair on that pipeline as well. I don't know exactly what we need to do yet, but based on my review of the situation, that sewer is about 15 feet deep. We have to remove at least 2 lanes of traffic to do our work. We're going to have to bring in some pretty big equipment to dig down. So I think that work is going to be somewhere between $100,000 and $120,000. But that's my estimate without having plans and specifications and knowing that we're going to have to do that work over a 3-night period in the evening, because there's no way that the city is going to allow us, I don't believe, to take out 2 lanes of traffic during the day. So that's coming at us. I don't know where we're going to get the funds. I'll have to work with our finance manager and our general manager to figure that one out, because we have been raising the money for other projects like our Eldon force main system. Last thing I want to say is that last month I reported that, or I mentioned that our Eldon pump station had, I'm going to say, the highest inflow throughout our system, and that we needed to start looking at that. Subsequently, I reported in this month that on the 25th of February, we had 2.6 inches of rainfall over a 24-hour period. I did the calculation, and fortunately, there wasn't a huge amount of inflow based on the amount of rain. We only received about 0.9%, which is about 1.1% below our benchmark. But that being said, during that rainfall, the Eldon pump station inflow was the highest of the 4 benchmark stations that we look at when we do this calculation. During that storm, we also had a high water alarm in the Indus system on that February 25th storm. And in fact, when staff was out there, they reported to me that the system was surcharged by about 3 feet, which tells me there's a lot of water coming into that sewer pipe. So we're starting to look into why is there that much water in that sewer. And last week, I tried to get a CCTV camera in, I think it was Thursday, and there was still so much water in that pipeline that we could not get the CCTV work done. And so we either need to stop our sewage by putting a plug in there. Coincidentally, our wastewater superintendent said he's running a drill on April 4th, where he'll put a stopper or pillow plug in a pipeline, and he's going to do a bypass pumping so that we can train our staff and practice doing the bypass in case we ever have an issue with a stoppage in the Indus system. So coincidentally with that, we're going to, since they're going to be stopping the tributary, well, not exactly stopping, but they'll be decreasing significantly the tributary flows to that sewer pipe. I'm going to go back and we're going to try to CCTV, as well as put a camera up 11 property laterals and see if we can see a smoking gun or residual inflow or infiltration coming into our system through those lateral pipelines. Depending on what we find there, I'll have more information. And again, Scott and I have been talking about doing smoke testing to see if there's any area drains, roof drains, other things that might be tied into our system. But based on what I've seen, I think that there's a smoking gun right there, and that system is creating high levels of inflow or possibly infiltration. So I'll have more on that after we get more information and more data. And with that, I just will say we've got 10 out of our 17 projects are active this month. And that concludes my report. Does anybody have any questions that I might be able to answer?
Just real quick, Art. The 2 issues that drove me crazy are Wilson Street. If we have an issue, why? I'm going to ask you a question there's no answer for. Why did the city do all that? Now we got to redo it, but yet we have to pay for the sewer manholes to be raised to the level, even though it shouldn't have been what they did. They shouldn't have really done.
Well, I guess I will say that
You're gonna pay us back.
I don't think so.
No?
No, they're not going to pay us back for those, right?
well, let me say that for the Wilson Street project, we have not been invoiced for raising any manholes along Wilson. So to date, we have received no invoice. I anticipate that upon completion of the project, we will be billed to raise every invoice, and I can't remember, it's probably about $1,000 that they, based on their line item, that to raise our manholes to grade. At this point, I do not tend to recommend them charging us any more or to re-raise the ones that they raised, because it's their contractor who put, I'll say, spoiled materials into the roadway.
Yeah.
So my position, to answer your question, is we will pay for the manholes that we have, nothing extra. But I guess like anything, the city could ask, but I don't know that they're going to ask for extra money at this point in time. Where might be the confusion is what our general manager and I were talking about was, should we ask the city to have their contractor raise the manholes to grade until they can complete this resurfacing of Wilson Avenue? To that, I said, if we either, I'll say, force the city to raise them, at that point, they might be able, or they might have a claim to charge us extra, because they would then be raising them twice based on our request. So in order to keep, I guess, in order to prevent them from claiming and us fighting it and all this other stuff, I'm kind of holding out. But the good news is, as of last week, they're restarting the process. And here in a week or two, I think we'll be done. So there may have been some confusion, President Schaefer, between the issue of raising them to grade temporarily and then dropping them back down, then re-raising them to grade.
Okay, I appreciate that. The other thing are these eucalyptus trees, Scott. Thank you for whatever Edison, whatever you did to influence Edison. Is that Mark? Thank you for doing that. Having sat, I think Director Eccles and I both have sat on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and there are some rabid tree people in this city. And they're rabid until a eucalyptus tree falls and hurts somebody. So Edison's going to pay to get rid of those trees, right?
Yeah.
And they're not subject to our Parks and Recreation requirements.
No, they're paying 4,000.
Yeah.
According to the arborist making that decision. So he told Edison wanted those trees gone because they're interfering the power lines. Apparently they want them gone a long time ago, but now the arborist, and I think he probably knew anyway. So I think he saw it and he said, yeah, okay, he agreed. And Edison.
But those trees have to go before the Parks and Rec Commission, and they ultimately say yay or nay to. So I'm glad we have a higher authority with the Edison guy. And I appreciate the work done to save us some
That was
money on
all,
that.
Mark did that work, so he should be commended for all the work.
I absolutely commend you for doing that.
Great.
Great. Art, go ahead.
I just had a question for Mark. Whereabouts at Adams is that problem at? Is it going towards Huntington Beach?
Are you familiar with our pump station location out Adams? It's essentially right at our pump station.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right there by the riverbed.
yeah.
That's gonna be, because traffic there is bad.
Oh, yes, yeah. I've been on occasion going to certain appointments, and I'll say the southern, southwestern portion of Huntington Beach after work. I've been driving through Adams, and it's basically backed up for miles.
You're better off getting on the 405, believe it or not. That is horrible down the bottom there.
When do you think that project would start?
I don't know yet. I just found out about it. I've had several things, pressing items and urgent items that we had to keep moving. And so this week I intend to meet with our finance manager and our general manager to figure out where we can get some funding to move that project forward.
Fantastic. Thank you. Next item.
Taller than some of the previous speakers. Nolani, if you can call up the PowerPoint presentation, that would be great. Thank you very much. All right, tonight I'm going to be asking for your approval to award a design contract to Kleinfelder Incorporated. There's also a couple of options that we're recommending for funding. Option A would be to move funds from our asset management funds into the Eldon Force Main project. The second option would be pay as you go, and basically what we would be looking to have you approve under the upcoming 2-year budget would be to add 480,000 during the 23-24 fiscal year, and then another 142,000 during the 24-25 fiscal year. My preference is to basically go with option A, and I'll cover this a lot more detail here. However, A will cause the funding in the asset management funds to fall below, I'll say, policy levels or the reserve amounts that you have dictated. I can't remember exactly by how much. It might be like 100,000 or so. But that's something that we should discuss, and we can have a discussion about that tonight. But that would be my recommendation. And then we take the 480,000 that I'm asking, we would be normally asking to budget. We could pay that back after during that next fiscal year, and then we can then take the 142K to pay additional back to get our reserves back up to that specified by our policy. Also, I'm going to say that this contract is based on a time and material not to exceed a certain dollar amount. In this case, it's going to be a little less than $700,000. And this is a little different type of contract than our agency usually gets into, because we usually do lump sum. And what the biggest difference is with time and materials is they will charge us for their time on designing the project, any materials they spend. And so we will pay them back, and they will provide all the receipts and all the invoices and everything for all of those items. The benefit to that kind of a contract, and I'll say reason why we're going to be proposing it during my presentation, is that there are many, many, many unknowns in this work that we're about to undertake, and I'll cover some of those later on. But due to the risks and the many unknowns, the lump sum amount would likely cause very high, I'll say, lump sum amounts. And based on what I've recently learned, it could be as high as $850,000 to $950,000. So I think it was the right call to do a T&M type contract, in that by doing this, extras will be limited to, any risk to us will be limited, because if we deem that there needs to be extra services, we then tell them to do those extra services. But because we have their fee schedule, we have the line items they provided, the only thing we have to negotiate with the consultant would be the hours to do whatever that task is. Or if, say, we want to buy a widget, a pump, we just actually have them submit the invoices to us and we pay for the actual costs. So that's how that's all set up. And our goal is basically to move this project forward. Our goal is really to reduce the potential for a major spill. And the action that we need to take, or I'm recommending that we take, is to basically build a second force main or redundant force main system. Next slide. Thank you. Item number one is in progress. The work on the actual station will be bid in April, or be placed to bid in April. The lay flat hose was ordered in December, and I believe it'll be delivered either possibly the second week in April. So it's inevitable. The lay flat hose is on its way. Item number two is what we're discussing tonight, and I'll be requesting your approval or recommendation on this item later on. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, and I know you've seen this many, many times, but our Eldon pump station is on Mesa Drive at Eldon. And what we're looking to do is we would like to run a second force main pipe up Newport, cross the freeway where it daylights, then come back down and ultimately tie into our discharge point. Now, that being said, she knows it's a long presentation, and so she wants me to move along.
We're on her side.
The Techite pipe that we're looking to do some work on actually cuts the corner here, and I'll come back and talk to you a little bit about that. but we're going to have to come back and do some work on that pipe. And so we want to tie this new, the new pipe goes from here up to this point. Then we want to rehab or replace the Tech-I pipe with either a structural liner or something else. So that's where we're looking to do. Next slide. And what we've completed for this, for the phase 2 or the force main project, back late last year, we solicited proposals for design services. And then the scope of work included connecting the new system to our existing pump station. It added 3,600 feet of 18-inch force main. And we want to rehabilitate the old 18-inch Tech-I pipe. That's about 2,300 feet. Then we're going to connect the new pipe, the rehabilitated pipe, to the second force main in our pump stations and connect it to the discharge point or the outlet to the system. So what we're done, it's going to be a completely redundant force main system, so that if anything ever happens, say to the Mesa Bridge, we just shut a valve and we force all the water through one pipe to the same location that it's being discharged today. Next slide, please. What we did during is we solicited the proposals. In addition to putting it on our website and letting people know what's going on, we physically sent requests for proposals to Ardura, Black and Veatch, Carollo, CDM Smith, HDR, Jacobs, and Kleinfelder. I followed up with phone calls to all of those firms. All of them really wanted to do the project, and they were chomping at the bit to submit a proposal. I called back about a week before the proposal due dates, and all started to tell me that they have too much work for the firm and they can't participate. And so we only received 2 proposals from Ardura and Kleinfelder. Both turns out to be very good firms. This agency has worked with Ardura before. I think this will be the first project with Kleinfelder, but Kleinfelder, I guess, spoiler alert, they are the highest rated, and I'll go over that in a lot more detail as well. Next slide. We asked in the proposals, give us a description of your firm. What's your team experience? How's this project going to be organized? Any city references or public agency references? All of these items. And the biggest one was the cost and fee to basically do this project. And we graded the consultants on these items. Next slide. Now you take those 9 items and we broke them into these 6 criteria. One is cost. We rated it 20%, responsiveness 15, approach is 20, qualifications and experience of the firms is 20, references are 10%. And then what was the team, and was there anything special about your firm? We asked, rated that at 15%. Now keep this in mind, because you'll see my scoring and I'll talk about the 20% and blah, blah, blah. So next slide, please. Now, one more thing that I want to make sure that we go over, and our agency, when we request proposals and we get proposals, the lowest proposer usually is assigned a 5 points of score. If the firm is between 15.1% and 25% above the lowest proposal fee, those firms get 4 points, and so on, to where if the proposers or bidders are in excess of 55% of the lowest price, we assign them 0 points. So while price isn't everything, it's quite significant in the way we evaluate our proposals. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to start talking about, let's get into the detail of the 2 specific proposers. Ardura, very good firm. Their overall labor hours was a little bit less than 3,000 hours. Their sub-consultants were about 871 hours for a total of almost 3,800 hours. But their fee was $851,180. Kleinfelder, 2318, 910, and they're about 500 hours less than Ardura, but their price is $631,409. Interesting that Kleinfelder did is they said, hey, for your existing bridge, we propose to do a structural analysis to determine in a failed condition or in a major earthquake, how much movement is there going to be in that bridge? And then by doing that, then we could go back and potentially retrofit that particular force main based on what they determine the movement, bridge movement, whether it's vertical, horizontal, or whatever. And so put a pin in this $10,900. Next slide, please. So these first three items, PDR, design and meetings, is what it takes to really design the project. And when you look at that number, basically Ardura says they can do our work for about 2,000, almost 600 hours. And Kleinfelder says they can do the same project for about 2,300 hours. Kleinfelder had some excessive time, as you'll see, in the meetings and workshop, and this was related to Caltrans because they feel as though Caltrans is going to require additional meetings, additional coordination, and our request for proposal basically said to give us 2 meetings worth of time, I believe it was. Next slide. Overall, we graded the firms on these items as I outlined previous. What we did is we took, without the cost score, we opened up their proposals and scored them technically. And what you're going to find is essentially they're very, very similar. 3.7 to 3.8. Kleinfelder was 1/10 higher. I'm going to say that essentially, technically, qualifications, teams, all that stuff, they are basically both can do the job. We can, either one has got all the horsepower needed to do what we need them to do. The biggest thing was Ardura's cost was 35% higher than Kleinfelder. So they only received a score of 3. When you multiply that by the 20% rating, they get a score of 0.6. Kleinfelder being the lower of the two, they get a solid 1.0. And so that put Kleinfelder above Ardura by about 5.5 point. And that's how they were initially scored. Next slide. Now that we've said, hey, Kleinfelder is basically the lowest or the highest rated proposer, because we're talking about $600,000 to $700,000 contract, we brought them in to review. We held 4 meetings with them. We talked about design intent, how many hours it was going to take to do their work, what assumptions did they use, because we wanted to make sure that they included everything that we wanted them to include, or if they include too much, we wanted to back them off a little bit. And based on the review, we did find that, for example, Kleinfelder had a lot of money in for Caltrans coordination. So we kind of backed that off a little bit, but then we added some area, for example, in lining the tech guide pipe and designing that. We put a little extra money in there. And we basically assured, I wanted to make sure that we all, them and us, are together. And then during the negotiation or the discussion on reviewing their proposal, we talked about some items, 3 or 4 specifically that I'll go over in a little bit, but we added some additional or optional activities that weren't really in our scope of work. Next slide. So their proposal, let's focus on just Kleinfelder. And what I want to say is these 2 columns right here is this was Kleinfelder's initial proposal to us. After meeting with them and reviewing the scope of work, this is what it looked like. And basically we did add about 100 hours of time, and we kind of moved some money between these items, added some money, took some money out. And what we ended up with is about a $648,000 line item just to do the scope of work that we negotiated or that we had asked for. Now, there were some things that we didn't do. For example, in talking with them, we thought, since we have to get a soils firm on board and we have to do some pretty deep borings along the freeway, they do that kind of work. We asked them for a proposal, and they came back with a proposal of $102,000. That is not going to be in the contract. We are not going to proceed or recommend we do this work. RBH and I think we can do this work for a lot less. We think we can do it less than $100,000. There is some hydraulic work that they needed to do. When we talked about the pump curves, because we're adding about 35 to 40% new length and new friction and more pump requirements on this new pipe. So we wanted to understand, is our station still going to function as required in order to get the flow that we need to pump through that new pipeline? So to do that, we have to conduct a hydraulic analysis. And so we basically talked to Kleinfelder about how they were doing it, what they proposed. RBH and I came back and said, what if we do some extra testing work over at the air vac so that we get a really good, I'll say, pump curve or head loss curve that tells us what the pressures are required in the system. So we added some work to the hydraulic analysis. The state of California Water Board says that, you know, public agencies for your wastewater and water facilities and infrastructure, you need to do a resiliency study specific to your assets. So to do that, we said, hey, give us a price to do the resiliency study that meets the intent of the water board and that will meet the test. And so they gave us a price for that. And then that Mesa Bridge evaluation I mentioned earlier, the $10,920. I believe I made a mistake there. It should be $900. But this bottom line is still a good number. But anyway, we're asking to do additional hydraulic work for 12, almost 300. The resiliency study for 13,000, a little more than $300, and that bridge analysis for $10,900. So altogether, when you add up all the fees and what they want to charge us for the proposed scope of work, and then the extra items that we talked about, they want to charge us $684,200 and some change. Next slide. I'll just real quick run through this. This is Kathy, Senior Project Manager, very good experience. The Deputy Project Manager, because it's such a big job. Brian does a lot of work for the city of Ontario, and it basically does millions and millions of dollars worth of infrastructure improvements for that city. He got assigned to our project. Carollo Engineers teamed up with Kleinfelder for this project, and their San Diego office is doing some work. And then their offices are right here at Bristol on the south side of the 405. We're going to be having staff from their local Carollo office has also been assigned to this job. Next slide. Basically, they'll be reporting to me and then the project team. There is a principal assigned to the project, and he basically is going to make sure that this team does all the quality control and assurances along with a team that's dedicated for that. Now, they did get some experts from Carollo to do the trenchless technology. They have some construction expert. They've added to this Jameson Engineering. They do a lot of assessment work, and they do a lot of work for different agencies in constructability, maintainability reviews. And so that contractor will be part of this constructability workshop. Next slide, please. Now, we currently have authorized a $370,000 budget as of last November when the board approved the money to go towards this project budget. Based on what we need to do, we're proposing that we're going to fund another $480,000 next fiscal year, and then another $142,300 the fiscal year after that. What we're proposing is, and I mentioned alternative A in the board agenda item, which would be to, if this and when this gets approved, we could use this money to pay back the option A so that we can get our reserve levels back up. And likewise, in year 2, we'll take this money and finish paying back the loan that we're going to make ourselves from the asset management fund to this project budget. Next slide. So staff recommendation. This is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to read this because if I don't, I probably will not get it right. But I will say what we're generally, I'll cover it generally, and then I'll read it. but I generally am asking to approve the contingency of about $36,500, approve the design fees of $684,202 and some change, and to approve a contingency 10% for this project. But because of the lack of fund in the project budget, I need to ask very carefully and word this very carefully. So bear with me when I read this recommendation. The recommended action tonight is to award a contract to Kleinfelder Incorporated and approving a 10% contingency for a total amount of $753,000. So that is basically this 36,000, the 684,000, and the contingency to make up that $753,000. The second thing we're requesting, and it can be either an A or B, I'm suggesting A, but we serve at the pleasure of the board. But option A would be staff is proposing the board of directors consider approving the transfer of $622,300 from asset management to the wastewater fund and appropriate $622,300 to the CIP project number 341 Eldon Force Main Redundancy. The board has approved a minimum level of reserves in the asset management fund of $5 million. The asset management fund currently has a balance of $512,400. If the board approves this transfer, the asset management fund reserve will fall below the $5 million. Staff will replenish the reserve during the fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25 budget process. Or we're offering an alternative, which would be staff will request the board of directors to appropriate funds during the fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25 budget process of the $480,000 during 23-24 fiscal year and the $142,300 during the fiscal year 24-25, totaling $622,300. Based on the project design outlay, the phased and proposed budget approach provides adequate funding during the project design. I will say I'm always nervous saying make an award without having the money in the budget. Although overall our agency does have the funds to move forward, it's just to do this with appropriate funds in the project budget, we would have to go below reserves in the asset management fund. Anyway, that next slide, please. That concludes my report. As lengthy as it was, I do have additional information, and I'm sure you're going to ask questions that'll pry it out of me. So with
See
that,
everybody grab their microphones?
yes, this is one of the largest projects that I think this agency has undertaken in a long time. So I imagine there's lots of questions.
I know Arlene.
I had two questions. The first one you kind of answered, but I was going to ask you, are you tapping into our reserve?
The answer is yes, depending on which option. I would like you to tap into reserve.
Was it the first option?
Option A taps into reserve. Is the asset management fund, is that the reserve fund, general manager? Yes. So that's it. Yes,
That was the first one.
that's the first
Okay.
one.
And then how do we look as a budget wise to be compared to what you want to take?
I'm not sure I understand the
Okay,
question.
yeah, I worded it poorly.
No, I probably just didn't understand.
We
it.
don't know yet because we haven't done next year's budget.
Yeah, but I was wondering budget wise, how we look on what you want to accomplish and take from the budget.
Okay, let me try to answer it this way. In working with our general manager and our finance manager, I have 480,000 being requested during the next budget process or during the first year of the 2-year budget cycle, and another 142,000 and change requested for the fiscal year after that, because we, as you know, or know where we do a 2-year budget.
Yeah.
That's where I came up with those money to replenish
Mhm.
the basically reserve fund that you asked about was that I would be asking for that money, and it's based on a $992,300 need for this project to move it forward.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question, but I will be asking for money coming up this budget, and based on the money I'm asking for, we do have a balanced budget.
And then you'd be replenishing.
Yes. So the money that you approve in the budget, instead of going to the project, will go to replenish the reserve fund.
Okay, that's all I wanted to ask.
Go ahead, Brad.
First question actually is going to be to Alan. How long do we have to be below our reserve level?
I can partially answer that, Alan.
Really wasn't,
Whoa.
I really hadn't looked at this item, but I do see we have operating reserves. Is this our policy that we're looking at? 25%. And it says we can only go below with board approval for one of 7 reasons to go below it. And you can do it for a one-time board approved expenditures, federal, state board budget shortcuts and loss of grant funding, local revenue shortfalls, increase in demand for specific services without another source of recovery. So we do have some authority to go beyond or below our reserve levels, but we will have to make a finding. We will have to pigeonhole it looks like, into one of the 7 categories or criteria for dipping into our reserves.
I kind of suspected that. And then going back to you, Mark. So depending what all the legalities of it are, with option A, I mean, we're getting close to reviewing our 2-year budget cycle. Why not wait until we can put all that in and do it then, instead of going below our recommended levels for option A?
I believe we could do that, but because the proposals were submitted this past fall, and because it took us time to painfully go through each and little salient point, it's been now 4 months since we've evaluated, started negotiations, and there is some urgency to get this project more moving forward, because it's going to be probably 4 or 5 years realistically by the time we finish putting in the last of the pipeline improvements. And it is a very complicated project, because we've got to work around fair times and all kinds of moratoriums. We've got to work with Caltrans. And so there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done over the next couple of years. And so we're sort of, I'll say, would like to move this forward, but I can certainly advise our consultant that if you want to push it off, I could advise that you would like to take it up and think about it for a month. I don't know, Scott, when is our budget going to go forward before the board for review?
Well, yeah, you have your first review in a couple of weeks, on April 11th. So.
Right.
So we could push it off, but I will say what you're going to see is the 480,000 and the 142,000, and that it does include a balanced budget. Again, if we approve this item tonight, Caitlin would just indicate it differently in her budget presentation to you. But the money's going to be there or paid back depending on which option you choose.
Yeah, so I would, based on Alan's findings, I'm generally okay with option A as long as it passes legal muster and everything like that. Because I do understand the urgency, but with budget coming in a few weeks, so I'm almost like we take it out now and hopefully pay it back in a couple months. I don't know. But when you advertise this to bid, did you advertise it as a T&M contract, or was this discussed after the bid was sent out?
No, it was advertised as a T&M contract not to exceed. So it's not just a T&M, but it's T&M not to exceed. And in talking, before we even sent out requests for proposal, I contacted Carollo, I contacted Ardura. I talked to several consultants to say there's multiple contract, as you know, there's multiple contracting mechanisms. And by most of them came back and said, that for this type of project and this type of work, because of the magnitude and the unknown and the risks and liability, we could manage all this by using this kind of a contract.
Oh, I agree. I refuse to do TNMs myself on these, so not to exceed TNMs because that's not TNM to
just
me,
for-
but.
Just for clarification for the public, T&M stands for time and
Time-
material.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
So-
time
so-
and material, yeah.
So they would charge us for time and material expended to complete the design of the project. If any materials that they purchase, they would turn over receipts to us and we would repay them for that type of a contract.
Because now my concern with the time and material that it was advertised as such, I'm thinking as a contractor. I'm gonna bid it not to exceed pretty darn high so I don't get burned on this. I'd be curious if you bid this out as more of a hard bid, what would the prices look like? Do you have an engineer's estimate on this?
Yeah, we thought it was going to be about 800 to 850,000. And then in talking with Doug Lanning of Carollo Engineers, he was saying if we went out with a lump sum contract, he said, for example, nobody knows the condition of the Techite pipe. And so for them to say they will design that Techite pipe without, they'd have to put money into CCTV, do a condition assessment, and then they come back and let's say there's a cave-in somewhere along the pipeline. Now all of a sudden that's a whole different type of design. And so what he was suggesting to us is that if we take on that liability and that risk, and we need to do it anyway. So what we did with Kleinfelder is we basically said, okay, Kleinfelder, Costa Mesa Sanitary District, we will put a CCTV camera, we will do the condition assessment, but for the sake of this particular contract, assume that we could use the old Techite pipe as a host for a structural liner. And that way they're not taking risk on, well, now I have to do something different that costs more to design. Okay, so if they don't take on that risk, they don't charge us. But again, because we went with a T&M, let's say we come back and we find a cave-in. That portion is going to have to be a dig and replace. Well, at that point, we can come back and talk about what kind of extra are we going to need to design this small portion of pipeline. Since we have their unit prices, we have their fee schedule as part of the contract. At that point, all we're going to basically negotiate is labor hours.
Right.
Because everything is published in the contract that our president and the secretary will be signing tonight.
And then with this sort of bid / contract, why the contingency then? If it's not to exceed?
Well, because I guess from a procedural or policy perspective, our general manager doesn't have the authority unless I get 10% approved to do change orders up to 10%. And because it's a not to exceed $684,202, I can't go past that number unless I have money that we can use to negotiate and then pay for a change order. But anything above 10% has to come back before this board to get approved.
Got it. And then.
And I think that's in additive. So if I do a 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, the sixth 2% increase, I got to come back to get approval from you.
Gotcha. And then what's the contracted OH&P or overhead and profit?
We don't have a contract on that. We don't have that as part of this because we thought this project was going to cost us $800,000. And so we don't, in fact, in the contract, it says that the unit costs have to include all of their overhead and profit and all that stuff.
So even on a change order.
Yes, we just need to
no
negotiate
additional
hours.
15% or.
Yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that.
yeah. We already have the unit prices. We have everything that we need except the hours because we don't know what that change order is gonna entail at this point.
Wow. Okay. Man, I wish you were on some of my jobs, but that's pretty good. It's good for us is what I'm saying. That's awesome. Then last question, I think.
I will say, Director Eccles, that's probably why Black and Veatch and Brown and Caldwell neglected to propose because This is a benefit to our agency, this kind of
Totally.
a contract.
Yeah, it's very good for us. So that's good, which leads me to Carollo chose not to bid, but yet Frost is working on the project and he works for Carollo. How's
Yeah,
that work?
they teamed up. So what happened was Carollo decided they were too busy to propose on their own. And so since they've teamed up with Kleinfelder on past projects, they said, hey, what if we did the trenchless portion and you guys do the rest of the project? And so I guess they got married to do this project, which to me is good because Carollo's right in our backyard here.
Yeah, no, they're good. Okay. Like I just I'll just reiterate. This is it's a lot of money, a big project, but it's good for the district. The way this is set up. So great job, Mark. Thank you.
It took me 4 months to get this negotiated, by the way. This has not been easy. Scott will tell you. In fact, I think earlier this week, I was up here till 9 o'clock last week, trying to finish up some last minute stuff. It's not an easy contract. You're right.
You did a good presentation.
Thank you for your expertise also.
So are we to the point to approve?
Not until Bob asks his question.
Oh, the asset management fund is it looks like a reserve, but it's a fund that's separate from our 25% and 30% reserves. So when we get financial reports, there is a reserve, policy reserve that Alan referred to it as 25%. And I think the solid waste fund might be 30% or something. They're in that ballpark. This, when we did the asset management fund around 2014, it's more of a goal to maintain that 500,000, that $5 million.
5 million, yeah.
Than a reserve. I'm not sure it's correct to call it a reserve. I think I understand.
I did
why
call it
you're
an
doing
asset
it.
management fund, but I was, and I've only been here 2 years. My understanding, Director Uten, was that it's sort of like, well, I guess it's sort of like a reserve fund.
It's like a reserve, but it's
Hmm.
it's not the policy determined 25 and 30%.
Right.
It is and it was set up at $5 million and the goal is to keep it at $5 million until we appropriately decide that it should be something else. If that happens, and that would take another study. So, I believe, I agree that, or I would support the way you've done it. I just don't particularly like your wording.
Okay.
Had to hit that gut shot.
How may I word it differently?
No, let's don't.
Just call it, it's an asset management fund.
And that's what it says, and that's what it says in the recommended.
That's
Oh,
probably
no,
on me.
but Mark used the term reserves too
I-
liberally.
I will not use reserve fund anymore. Asset management fund.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to replenish it
Yes, sir.
over time if it gets below $5 million. And you have a process.
We have a plan to do that.
plan to do that.
Yes. And that plan includes balanced budget for the next 2 years.
I mean, you could also decide not to do any other capital improvement projects, and that would bring the fund back up to that level.
That's true.
But
Oh.
Yeah, Mark's like, no.
Based on the condition of some of the projects that we have, or some of
I
the
think-
thing, I don't know that we could, but I don't know that I would recommend it, Director Hooton.
and neither would I.
You know, for the entire time that I've been on this board, Eldon Force Main has always been the
Mhm.
number one issue, no matter what we talk about.
Yeah.
Eldon Force Main. I'm going to support option A because let's don't kick the. I was going to say let's don't kick the reserve down the road, but I won't say reserve. Let's get this done and let's get it off the agenda for the next
Yeah.
10 years because we know we have to do it. It's like, I got to pull that tooth and I'm not going to kick it down I'm gonna support option A. I think I want to get this done and let you sleep better at night, let our general manager sleep better at night over
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna move that we approve the option A proposal for this project and get things going.
And I'll
Okay,
second it.
Wait, can I add a friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
Just we got to actually award the contract and contingency to Kleinfelder as well.
Yeah.
And then option A could kick in if it passes legal muster.
And Mr. President, can we clear the air about whether this is a reserve or whether it's asset management money? Because if so, if it is reserve, we have to make findings and it has to be. a
Yeah,
plan
I'm
to
sorry,
replace
Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with all that said, to go with, the motion is to go with option A, providing it passes that, award the contract to the K company,
Kleinfelder, yeah.
Kleinfelder, and move on. That's my motion.
Yeah, and I second
I think Brett did.
I
He gets
beat
it.
you that one.
He get this one.
it. You got it?
I
The
snuck
motion
it.
by
I'm sure you
Schaefer
said no.
and second by Eccles. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was a resounding aye, wasn't it?
Good report.
Thank you.
You always, it's always better to dazzle them with your footwork. Now, what's it? Anyway, thank you, Mark. Thank you
You're welcome.
for keeping this on the ball. Okay, no treasurer with us this evening, right? Mark has nothing, didn't have it. Scott, I'm sorry, Alan, you want to go to the attorney's reports?
Thanks, Mr. President. I think the first item is speakers ordinance. And as you know, government has always had rules for decorum for speakers in meetings, and we have adopted rules. And since we adopted our rules, which basically require civility and decorum, there's been a few cases that have come down, federal cases. One involving a Nazi salute in the back of the room, and another one involving right here in our city with a heckler calling the mayor a racist pig and lots of other profanity. And it all produced a discussion about when can you remove or silence a speaker. And the rules from those cases were distilled by the legislature into SB 1100. That is what we incorporated into our ordinance, which is before you tonight. And it's basically the center part of the ordinance. You already had the other rules about time limits and things like that. But it basically provides that any individual disrupting the meeting may be removed if the procedures set forth in SB 1100, now Government Code 54957.95, are followed. And they define what disrupting means, which means engaging in behavior that actually disrupts, disturbs, impedes, or renders infeasible the orderly conduct of the meeting, and includes one of the following: either a failure to comply with your reasonable rules and regulations you've adopted, or engaging in behavior that constitutes the use of force or a true threat of force. And that means something that would make a reasonable person believe he was being threatened. Prior to removing the individual, you are required to warn the individual that the behavior is disrupting the meeting, and failure to cease that behavior will cause their removal. This doesn't apply if it's actual use of force or threat of force, but otherwise you have to give them a warning first. And that's basically what's required. You are free to adopt this ordinance, and then we will be in compliance with the law, and we'll have this in place for our various meetings and public hearings we have coming up. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
So Mr. Acosta is never going to go away. Having sat on the dais of the city council during the Acosta issues, this is sort of following me around from place to place. But one of the questions I had, it says, the point of sergeant at arms. Do I have to pick between the five of us, or can I pick us? We've had issues over the years. I mean, we've had to have security and different things like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see this come forward. I'm glad it's codified finally, and we have the ability to, up until now, we haven't had the ability to deal with disruptive behavior, without taking a risk. So I'm glad to see this finally come forward, and hopefully Mr. Acosta will get his just due. Questions for Alan? Anybody? All right, we're looking for some action on this.
Move for the adopting ordinance number 2023-136, amending the operations code per SB 1100.
Thank you, Arlene. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item 2, oral report on the general manager's performance.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a simple report. We have to make an oral report before you approve an increase in compensation for your executives. The manager's salary is being increased by 6% in the contract that was tentatively approved by the board and Scott. And that would make his compensation, his salary, $220,461 per year, retroactive to January 4 of this year. And other benefits that are based on that salary would, of course, follow that. That is the oral report that needs to precede your vote on his contract.
Okay. On this, the second part of the oral report regarding his performance, how do we do that? Am I just going to make a statement as to his performance?
I'm not sure what's required by the performance. I
Yes.
think you've already reviewed his performance.
Yeah, we have.
This is an increase based on your review of his performance.
Okay, so we're looking at item number 3 then.
Yes, that's approving the contract.
Okay.
What, did he do something wrong tonight to make you upset to re-review?
Not yet.
Yes, it's just,
Basketball team is still playing and mine's not.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that.
I thought it was because the district engineer used the term reserve fund.
There you go.
If you can't straighten out your district engineer, you got a lot of work to do.
Mark, all employees are at-will employees.
All right. Any discussion on the amendment for the employment agreement? Okay. We have an action? Or a motion?
I'll move to approve the report authorizing the 6% agreement.
I'll second it.
Right. Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And then secondly,
5-0. Was that voting on the contract itself or?
did I say 7?
Yes, you did. You said
Monday.
7.
Well, we give Bob our credit that he deserves. So that motion carries unanimous 5-0.
Yeah, we had 2 CAC members there. I included them or something.
Was that the vote on the contract itself or?
That was
Yes.
the performance and the contract, I guess.
I was doing based on the oral report, 6%.
So that
Just approve the contract.
just approved the contract. Congratulations. Don't forget what Bob said. All employees are at will. Okay. Anything else for us this evening, Alan?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you all very much. Let's move to a brief discussion on local meetings from everybody. Bob?
Yeah, it was a pretty lengthy meeting. Basically, Orange County Sand District had 3 public hearings and on all different
Bring that paper.
fees, capacity, industrial waste and whatnot. Most of the rest of it was approving different rehab requests and substantial increases in odor control chemicals. And then I talked to Rob Thompson. He said basically the member agencies are doing a good job because they only saw a 1.54% increase in above their normal flows for any of these rains. And they're still working on taking potential liquid waste into their digesters. And they will provide compost for their member agencies to help with 1383 requirements, and it's all stopped there.
Yeah, just a quick note on OC sanitation. My neighborhood is the closest neighborhood to the plant along California Street. And then back into Alabama and Alaska and Alabama and whatever the other little street is. There is a group of citizens who meet on a regular basis. They sit out in the street and drink wine and talk. And a lot of the folks had been complaining about odors coming over the riverbed,
Yep.
especially along Alabama there. And so they approached OC San so OC San reached out to all these citizens and invited all of them to come over and take a tour of the plant just to see what's going on. I mean, they went out of their way. And now those citizens, I was gonna say those ladies, but they're really citizens, they all feel much better about the odors that are coming over the riverbed. So.
I used to know most of them on a first name basis. But what
But
they
I
do-
appreciated OCSD doing that. They didn't have to do that.
Well, what the citizens should do is call the odor complaints in, because there's a dearth of calls to the agency.
Yeah. Oh, I have no doubt.
The Orange County Sanitation District has goals for the collection system and the 2 treatment plants. And we rarely get calls.
Yeah, I'm
The
sure.
Orange County Sanitation District rarely gets calls.
It was a lot worse 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, Sarfa, anything from
Okay.
Sarfa?
Okay, I'll try to be quick, but we discussed and reviewed the Santa Ana River Mainstream and Westminster projects status presented by the county. One, we're overview of the project spillways to be finished in 2024, which is next year. Construction completion is not going to be totally until 2031. There's a 5-year monitoring of dam and physical closeout year 2031 to 2036. This schedule is subject to acquiring. There's only 10 parcels behind the dam now they have to buy. Used to be over 100, so they're getting close. They're currently releasing water from Prado Dam just to make sure all the functions are working to release the water. Projects are currently under construction. There's 3 projects currently under construction in the mainstream, and that'll be finished by 2024. There's a field trip to Prado Dam, a date in May, waiting for the end of the rainy season. Probably it's going to be in June. Overview of Westminster East Garden Grove floodplain. Project updated. It's a 74-mile watershed. Goal is to help the residents get out of the flood zone, insurance payments in those low areas. Still need funding from the project from the Corps of Engineers. So that they've got it all planned out. They just need to get the money. Projects are being planned in the 7-year CIP projects that are very costly. It's $1.2 billion for the first costs. Report from Herm Nakasani. There's going to be a field trip in June. Van will pick up at different venues from the members of the committee. And then no public comments.
Tell them not to take too many homes out of the flood zone and the
Other than-
premium of the insurance premiums.
The goal is to take all of them.
Oh, my God. Don't want to hear that. So, thanks, Art.
I'll put that in I put it in my report already.
Lane, Stock and CSTA.
Right. On ISDOC, this Thursday is a meeting with ISDOC. I don't know,
Quarterly meeting.
it's a general meeting.
Yeah, the quarterly meeting.
And so at this time, we have a speaker coming and it's going to be virtual. They can't use the facilities at the water district. And so they're having a problem where they're going to go and what they're going to do. So what we're doing right now, we're just staying in the virtual type of situation, which is good for a lot of people. So this is a general meeting. It's at 11 o'clock to 11:30, and then you bring your own lunch, you know, on your, wherever you're doing it.
Wherever you're eating it.
And they're still kind of working on their board of getting different people for situations because some didn't make it. And and I pulled out, so It caused a havoc. And then on Waco, I went to Waco and I don't have my paper here, but I did hand in my expense sheet. And on Waco, it was a long meeting, but it was good. Did you go? No,
I didn't put it
Yeah,
on my.
you did.
it was,
I was
I
there.
wrote it up already. It's in my paperwork. but
Yeah,
it's
she's
no
got
longer.
it.
I have it written, so, you know,
You
I can
use
show
mine
it to you.
if you need to, but
So.
that's pretty thorough.
And then on CSDA, CSDA is going to have a national meeting, which means it's all the different states. And we seem to be getting a lot of states involved with us now. We have a new person in Washington DC that we have to help us with our different legislation we have. And right now, on the professional development part, there's a deadline of May 1st. And it's open now for anybody wants to go ahead and put in about someone like I did with the different staff members. And that is, it's due to, let's see, what is it? Deadline is May 1st.
And that's for like board member of the
Yeah,
year,
it could be.
general
board-
manager
yeah,
and
like,
staff. Yeah.
What I did for Mike and then for Scott or anybody in the staff. So we might be thinking about, if anyone is deserving of it or, think of it and discuss it even at a study session.
Do they have a district engineer of the year award that we could
Sure.
put somebody in for?
Yeah, we could do that. We could,
Not if he gives a presentation.
yeah. That would be interesting.
Still working here.
Sorry, Art.
But I'm serious.
I don't know.
Okay, you are too,
I am
even though
too.
you're laughing.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, so CSDA is having a lot of meetings right now. We're having a board meeting coming up. I put in my qualifications for the campaign and they accepted it and sent me back that I'm on there. And there's one man running against me and that's okay. So, if he can do all I did in all the years, then more power to him. So anyway, that's about it.
For SDRMA, last week was the Claims Education Day.
Oh, did you go?
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend, so I missed that and I missed the board meeting. And probably the biggest thing that I know from the board meeting was they introduced the new CEO for SDRMA. And if you ask me what his name is, I can't tell you because I don't remember. We interviewed him and that's who the board chose. But I'll have more for you in a meeting in May because we have our next board meeting in May.
Is he local or?
No, he's local for Sacramento. Lives in Folsom, I think.
Oh, okay.
He was a assistant CEO for Prima, which is the Public Risk Insurance Management Authority or something like that. Any other meetings anybody has? All right, seeing none, let's go to old business and new business. We have none. And then finally, oral communications and director comments. Any directors with, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, just following up on Sue Lester's comment. It was about a year ago, I had requested a study session on term limits for the board, and I believe President Uten agreed. Is that something we can do? Just
Let's
study the issue and then everyone can weigh in from there. But yeah, I do. It was about a year ago. So if we could get that on a study session, if I think it would be appropriate.
Is it worth considering? I mean, that's a major deal. It's
Yeah.
term limits is a huge deal.
Yep.
Rather than just throw it at a study session, what do you think about an ad hoc committee to discuss it? Couple of meetings with an ad hoc committee to at least let staff have the time and the ability to get more. If we gets thrown at a study session, it's going to be too quick.
I'm open to anything that gets us studying it, learning it. So if an ad hoc's more appropriate, I would love to be a part of that if we could, but I'm fine with that. Just something to
Why don't you and I
get it going,
discuss that?
What the policy review ad hoc committee do it?
No.
No?
This is too big of an issue.
Oh.
It's a game changer.
So do you want me to put this on the agenda, the April agenda, requesting two board members appoint each two board members to the ad hoc committee? or-
Can we do it at the study session in April to get it moving?
Yeah.
Let's do it that way.
because I agree, it's a big issue now. Whatever were to come of it, most everyone, but it's for the future for a lot of down the road. And I know there's a lot of people, including Sue and members of the public who at least want us talking about it. So,
I wish they were still here. I'm going to make this comment. I mean, it is a big deal. It's a game changer, but I don't want us to approach term limits for us
Mhm.
simply because we have term limits for the CAC. That's
Right.
a whole different, thing. And I appreciate the comments, but from Sue and from Cindy, but let's do this not simply directed at this board,
Yep.
not because the CAC has term limits. I don't want that to be any part of the discussion.
yeah, no, I agree. I just want it discussed for this body up here. And if it requires an ad hoc, I'm fine with that. After a year, and I just think it's a good discussion that we need to have and investigate.
Let's have this. So our Scott, get that? Bobby?
I think the board discussed this once over the years, and I think the ad hoc committee should be privy to those discussions.
Yeah, I agree. If there's anything staff can find on that, I'm sure you can.
I
Okay.
don't remember that ever coming up personally.
I don't, not in my time up here. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was, but I'm not sure. I think Dan Worthington has
Hmm.
to be studied one time.
Okay.
And we went, and we did have, I thought we had a meeting on it.
Okay.
But if
That's
it's
fine.
not available, it's not available.
Well, let's just get it going.
Right.
That'd be like more than that almost. Yeah, at least 12 years.
So,
Okay.
Hey, there's a term limit.
All right, staff, you have your direction for that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn us and reconvene to the study session of April, whatever. Do we know what date? Not April 14th, I hope.
We have it?